Welcome to Lesson 1.2, The Scientific Method. Before we begin, make sure that you have something to write with and something to write on. There's a short exit quiz and survey at the end of the lesson. The minimum passing score is 80%, and the notes should help. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the goal of the scientific method, understand the difference between a scientific theory and scientific law, explain the importance of scientific models. Also, you should be able to use the following vocabulary words: scientific method, observation, hypothesis, independent variable, dependent variable, controlled experiment, scientific theory, and scientific law. Let's begin. There are three methods we can use to solve problems: problem solving, critical thinking skills, scientific method. The next few slides will dig a little deeper into each method. According to the website Verywell Mind, problem solving is a mental process that involves discovering, analyzing, and solving problems. The goal of problem solving is to overcome obstacles and find a solution that best resolves the issue. There are best strategies for solving a problem. How you solve the problem depends on the situation. The methods used are graphs, if the data is numeric, that is quantitative. A graph allows us to see the trends. Trial and error is a good method when there's a lot of time and the pieces are easy to manipulate. Trial and error is how most jigsaw puzzles get solved. You can look for patterns. This one links back to graphing in a way, but you are not plotting the information on a piece of paper. You're using your senses. You're looking at what's there in front of you. And finally, use visualizations. This is when we create a model of the problem in our mind. You look at what you have, envision the product, and then envision a way to get to what you need to meet the goal. Critical thinking refers to the ability to analyze information objectively and make a reasoned judgment. It involves evaluation of sources such as data, facts, observations, phenomena, and research findings. This method of problem solving is one that applies across all careers. An ER nurse needs to be able to assess the needs and prioritize the treatments of patients. A plumber would need to be able to assess the problem and determine which equipment he needs to fix the problem. The steps are: identify the problem, collect data, and then come to a conclusion. It is an efficient way to solve problems, and we use it constantly without thinking about it. The third and final problem-solving method addressed in this lesson is the scientific method. The scientific method is a systematic approach used in science to solve a problem or answer a question. In this version of the scientific method, there are 5 steps, and it starts with a problem or observation, something that makes you wonder why or go, The second step of the scientific method is to propose a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess to answer the question or solve the problem. The observation itself can act as the research or simply asking questions of those around you. Often, this is enough to answer the question or solve the problem. If your research does not provide a satisfactory answer, you need to design a controlled experiment. There are many ways to structure the experiment, but the most important part is that it is controlled. Within the experiment is the control group. This is a step of the experiment where nothing is changed. The experimental group is the part of the experiment where all conditions remain constant except for the one variable being tested. Within the experimental group, you have 2 types of variable. The first is the independent variable, which is manipulated or changed during the experiment. The independent variable is also known as the manipulated variable. The other type of variable is the dependent variable, which is the one that responds to changes in the independent. The dependent variable is also known as the responding variable. The fourth step is to analyze the results, the data. The best way to collect data is in a table. This makes the information easier to interpret. However, if the data is quantitative, the best method is to graph the results as a scatter plot, as shown here. The independent variables are plotted on the x-axis and the dependent on the y-axis. Do you notice a trend? A trend is a general pattern you observe, and in this situation, it is the independent variable increases, the dependent variable increases as well. The fifth and final step is a conclusion, which is a summary of the results compared to the original hypothesis. Now here's the important thing. Even the greatest of scientists didn't always get it right the first time and had to revise their hypothesis and test again, and again, and again, and again, until they were able to match their hypothesis to the results and come to an explanation of what they were observing. If the experiment is conducted repeatedly by different scientists who all come to the same conclusion, the finding can become a scientific theory. A scientific theory is an explanation backed by the results of repeated scientific testing. Theories change over time as we gather more information and develop better technology. Theories explain where a law is a scientific rule that describes a phenomena but does not explain why the phenomena happens. Theory and law are not interchangeable. Theories change, laws do not. Here's a flow chart to represent the scientific method. In the world of research science, there is often no definitive conclusion, meaning that regarding the hypothesis, and the experiment must constantly evolve. At this time, you should be able to identify the goal of the scientific method, understand the difference between a scientific theory and a scientific law, explain the importance of scientific models. Also, should be able to use the following vocabulary words: scientific method, observation, hypothesis, independent variable, dependent variable, controlled experiment, scientific theory, scientific law, and model. When you are, proceed to the next slide for your exit quiz. Please gather your notes. This concludes Lesson 1.2, the scientific method. And if you scored 80% or better on the exit quiz, the following assignment has unlocked. I hope you learned something.